cannot hear you, so just be loud.
Can do. That's good. Anyone not ready? Not ready? First, the background. India's status as a nuclear power is unique. In September 2018, the Nuclear Suppliers Group granted India a waiver allowing it to access to civilian nuclear technology and fuel from other countries, making it India's the only country with nuclear weapons that is not part of the NSG. The second argument is India's prelude is happening now on June 3rd of 2018. India's test tried its nuclear Agni-5 missile from the missile base in Hyderabad. The same missile has been tested 5 times in the last 6 years. The third argument is that recent estimates suggest that India has at least 110 nuclear weapons. The plain text. The People's Republic of China should allow the Republic of India to join the Nuclear Suppliers Group as on the conditions that India shuts down the Dhruva heavy water reactor and places International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) safeguards over all 22 of its nuclear reactors. Again, the People's Republic of China should allow the Republic of India to join the Nuclear Suppliers Group on the conditions that India shuts down the Dhruva heavy water reactor and places International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) safeguards over 22 of its nuclear reactors. The solvency. First being that India wants to get into the NSG and has been trying to since 2008. China is the only actor that has been blocking the bid out of the 48 current member countries. The second argument is that China allows India to join the NSG on a condition of shutting down the Dhruva reactor and allowing inspection by the IAEA, which means that India will accept the bid, particularly because they've been lobbying for it since 2008. And the second argument being that all weapons created with plutonium has been generated on the Dhruva water reactor, so it stops all proliferation. The third argument being that, like the Iran deal, international inspectors would be allowed into the country to place safeguards. International inspectors would have access to everything. Previously, this has been able to decrease future proliferation and future creation of nuclear weapons. The fourth argument is that empirically India takes positive incentives well. In 2010, the threat, they shut down its serious nuclear reactor because the United States offered a civilian nuclear agreement. The fifth argument is that the plan goes through no means, particularly the climate representative to the NSGA would indicate that they are no longer allowed to block India's bid, and this representative would work through China's Central Foreign Affairs Commission. Unit. First is that China-India relations are tenuous now. The first argument is that in 2017, double dockling stand up in June 2017, China and Indian troops faced over China's attempt to extend an existing road southward into disputed territory of dockland. This triggered a sharp rise in tensions where both countries accused each other of violating international agreements. The arguments that tensions still remain because of the long and pending border disputes and its representation of growing Chinese military capability in the Indian Ocean and issues related to the China-Pakistan economic corridor. The second argument is that China-India relations have historically worsened whenever India engaged in nuclear proliferation. The A argument is that China-India relations hit a low point in 1998 following India's first nuclear test. India's defense minister George Fernandez declared China as enemy number 1. Quote, the third argument is that India-Pakistan relations are on the brink now, particularly India-Pakistan are on arms race right now after the November 1st Agni-5 short-range solid fuel and nuclear capable ballistic missile being tested. This test followed Pakistan's own testing. The next argument is that just this month India threatened to fire at least 6 missiles at Pakistan. As Islamabad said, it will respond 6 times over. The C argument is that Kashmir region is a constant fear of instability. The two countries have been at war 3 times in the past 70 years. The links. First, the plan has to shut down the Dhruva reactor. This allows for India to decrease in the amount of weapons-grade plutonium. India has had to access each year. The second argument is not allowing inspectors access, which means that there's no longer allowing to safeguarding reactors, which are required to allow for randomized testing and the IAEA inspections for international actors. The third argument is that it shows Chinese concessions by allowing India into the NSG. China is the only country remaining in the 48 member countries blocking India's entry. In this report increases regional relations, particularly by acting as a soft power with Pakistan. The next argument is that cutting off this amount of materials is key to agreeing with Chinese and India-Pakistan relations. The internal links is that first, the soft weapon-grade plutonium for being produced all of India's nuclear weapons are plutonium-based and are coming from the plutonium-based reactors in Dhruva. The next argument is that inspections are necessary to stop the application of fissile material into new weapons. The impacts. First, this leads, this prevents a conventional war from happening. We would say that this war would be part of a massive amount of death and humanization, particularly 3 million people being killed. The Kashmir war, recreation of the Gibraltar conflict, particularly would also result in the targeted religious minorities. Second, it would lead to an absolute nuclear war. We would isolate that. Pakistan's first strikes against India right now is inevitable, particularly because they are afraid of Indian proliferation. When we isolate that, inclusion to the NSG would bring us back from the brink. We isolate the nuclear war results in extinction, particularly because of the usage of weapons which blots out the photosynthesis in the sun, particularly it kills all life on Earth. First, that after Russia has the largest and most advanced program reactor based on fast breeder reactors through generating more fuel than the super second that they are most likely a viable source of cleaner and higher energy regeneration is through nuclear power production. The third argument is that India is currently the third largest emitter of prehistoric rates and relies heavily on coal-fired power plants.
It needs to update thorium reactors.
It needs to update thorium reactors. The internal link analysis is that and the NSG entry would increase the amount of missile material that India can access, which would increase its nuclear production. Particularly, NSG controls 70% of the world's missile material. The early adoption of thorium technology provides more domestic benefits, particularly through the independence and security. The next argument is that it also places India out of the coal industry, particularly because pollution is really high. But we say that the only check back against that is the utilization of cleaner nuclear energy. We say that thorium is unique to this. The NSG entry would allow the reduction of health problems that come from the utilization of coal energy, particularly the 1.6 million deaths that come in 2018 alone from air pollution in India. The impact analysis that structural violence, particularly the lung disease and emphysema, that is inevitable in a world where you are placed near a coal production. We say that it becomes not competitive to no longer keep these coal plants open, which means that there's a decrease in death and humanization. We isolate the people that are closest to these coal plants are particularly ethnic minorities, particularly that are not supported by the BJP or the Hindu nationalist minority, which means that you always recreate cycles of poverty absent the plan. Framework. First, the role of the ballot, which for the team with the best policy action, but for the team with the best policy action, the first argument is that the impact of the affirmative vote and the defense of the representations of the affirmative, particularly this, will check back against any critical framework that then agrees. The second argument is that we have a good research method, multiple awards with this. The first argument is that particularly public policy information is publicly accessible. That means that it is good for education and fairness because it is the most successful. The B argument is that it allows the interrogation of ideological state apparatuses. It allows for an indictment of state hegemony and settler colonialism, particularly because it allows for an structural analysis to be understood. Particularly, we would isolate the say British knowledge is otherwise inevitable. The C argument is going to be particularly that modeling is uniquely key to be able to check back against deleterious violent logics, particularly Black Panther modeling of police interactions allows for better micropolitical action and revolutionary potential. We say that absent this structural understanding and the inclusion of policy uniquely means that you always kill off particularly people who are Black around the third argument is that particularists are good, particularly priests might be bad, but they at least can go about white supremacists. The next argument is that AMLO, the Mexican president of Mexico, who was a former Zapatista, he became president and implemented poverty measures for the violent indigenous, which is the reason as to why his apparent not see the political. The next argument is going to be the states and particularly Catalonia and Pakistan, Catalonia and Palestine, who show that there's a consecration of it and afterwards with the conception of futurity is inevitable in a world that the state exists, which means that realism is also the way that you should evaluate the affirmative, which means we get impacts of validity, extinction, etc.
Before we start flex, can we have your plain text, please?
Yep, thank you.
And the roll ballot.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's also key.
Where is it?
Is there an interp or is it just the roll ballot?
It's just the roll ballot.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take it. Here's the plan text.
Okay, we're going to read it back if that's okay.
Yeah.
Plan the People's Republic of China should allow the Republic of India to join the nuclear suppliers group on the condition that India shuts down the
Druva
heavy water reactor and places International Atomic Energy Agency safeguards on over all 22 of its nuclear reactors.
Yep.
Okay. Roll ballot, vote for the best policy action.
Vote for the team with the
Both, yeah, okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I got that.
Wait, is vote for the best policy action?
Yes.
Team with the best policy.
Should I write it?
It's-
Okay, I know it's fine. You got it. Okay. All right, sorry. Let's go. Sorry. That's helping me to find the done. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that was nice.
That's a nice little half of the stuff. You want that?
Oh, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Cool.
stem. Actually, let's do the their role of the ballot right after the one off, then case stem, then case in order. Yes.
You said roll call from top to bottom.
Yeah. Cool. Is everyone ready? Sorry. This is gonna.
First framework, the role of the ballot is to vote for the team that best challenges the fascism of settler colonialism. The role of the ballot is to vote for the team that best challenges the fascism of settler colonialism. One violence is structural, not merely material, which means usually can't capture the violence of cycle. Cycle violence is about the structure of power of the society over indigeneity, regardless of whether indigeneity materially benefits that structure is still violent. The cycle society is the power of life and death, which the consequences of the U.S. is utilized against anti-rocky policy. Decisions are driven by useful calculations that would have been allowed to achieve for further creation to create the frontier societies within Europe, but that was precluded by the logics of disability. The figure of indigeneity was originally seen as not valuable, which allowed for the creation of the frontier. See, freedom is a question of quality of life and structural. Slave who's treated really well, still slave from the structure of the money, the creative oppression need to be analyzed as a prior consideration. Two is that psychological epistemology comes first. Psychological societies invest in tons of resources in creating educational curriculums that seem to frame psychology back in the past, back to 1492, rather than continuing legacy. A links to the truth into the PMC, the structures of knowledge upon which we construct plans are important to inform the validity of your policy. So if we've been a lengthy after some talking about neck up to that because negating to deny the truth of B, securitization of the psychological society really relies requires infinite resources. Look at psychological societies on in the eastern U.S. expanded west, even though these were not verified. There were no verified resources in the west that would have been possible prior to that expansion. This means that the conflict is inevitable as everything becomes a threat. Evaluate their truth claims as false securitization. Also, they led us to believe that Iraq having weapons of mass destruction would justify genocide and hundreds of thousands of Iraqi deaths. See, we don't need an alternative. If students submit a bad paper, you shouldn't give them an A just because no one submitted a better paper. 3 is field illusory and a focus on nothing happens to be vote after night when their relation debate matters. A focus on field also sees individual agency, which kills value of life and makes a change possible to create. Next is the links. 1. The affirmative reification of the people from Republic of China as a mediator is bad. Sometimes the Uyghur population is subjected by the people from Republic of China is uniquely bad. So would be the additionally China focuses on violence in other populations which you have the way that China has made moves to control markets of South Korea. Some point C is this is the method and indictment methodology and they're materially good. They're always going to further the process of cyclination. The second is the idea of a mediator for two irrational countries is bad. So this is the same logic they used to argue that the U.S. government is necessary to create land treaties for indigenous tribes while actively stealing that land. This leads to the recreation of indigenous as a 0 point of modernity. 3 is securitization logic. A is the affect is that the nuclear prolif is acceptable for Western countries like the U.S. but not to incomprehensible actors. B is they always replicate the logic of cultural genocide where we decide that the other must be not be trusted, can't be trusted. C is also a solvency text that use that logic to always replicate more securitization. The fourth thing is going to be green colonialism. Someone names that looking how the Ecuadorian government has always used like stopping climate change and stopping deforestation as an excuse to push the top on people off of their land in Ecuador, which means that some would be that this is also an indicted methodology because it means that they're always going to allow actors like China that have literally been proved to be psychology just push indigenous people off their land as an excuse to stop climate change and the other environmental harms that they isolate impacts. 1. Cultural violence. Asexual logic is assimilation is not genocide in nature. Doesn't need to murder indigenous people, rather to assimilate them in the larger structure of the cycle society. Then through cultural genocide, cultural genocide at least unites individuals in places where their lives can be rendered valuable. This means their value life to cause repression. A violence is always justified in relation to some point in order to justify the particular population's valuable and isolate their coherence with absolute or abnormality. Crucial side of abnormality is the figure of indigeneity, which means the ideological point from which violence is justified. B. Worse than any other impact because death and dehumanization with positive semiotics of a human subject that exists to be conceived of a human subject that exists begs the question of how humanness is created in the first place. 3 is infinite violence. Asexual is based on an idea of the frontier in order to have a cycle society. You need to put in contrast with the society which is the frontier. B. The frontier is unsustainable. At some point we'll run out of frontier to occupy because we exist in a finite space. The implication is that cycle society will force to turn in on itself, which justifies infinite violence. Alternative. Vote neg to interrogate the structural process of set call and endorse disorientation, which is a process of set call society recognizing its own alienity. Vote neg to interrogate the structural process of settler colonialism and endorse disorientation, which is a process of settler colonialist society recognizing its own alienity. 1. Epistemological retrograde process of challenging our orientation towards cycle is a way of recognizing that the way that cycle influences not just the existence of politics, but the terms of political rationality itself too. Recognizing cycle as a structure allows for a recognition that its violence exists beyond the assimilation of indigenous people in the cycle society. The cycle is merely about indigenous individuals, but
once the individuals are assimilated, the violence is supposed to be over. 3 is the orientation and penalty society recognizes that ethical society is alien. Hopefully, if we recognize the original wrongness of this ethical enterprise can be grasped and indigeneity must be respected. 4, the alternative self-the-actus orientation means that we don't view the land as our own. Instead, the settlers see themselves as alien to the place because of our ability to encroach on other land through basis. 5 is permanence. Something is always necessarily going to fit the issue of settler colonialist structural analysis. B is always going to lead to the infinite recreation of frontier, which justifies infinite violence. Go to their roll of the ballot. First, they say publicly accessible information, but we would say the critical literature is equally publicly accessible information. Oh, you're saying our roll of ballot is a counter roll of ballot, in case that wasn't obvious. They say that inclusion in field is always going to be unique. We have to learn to work within the state. We would say that you're always going to force us to role play. Our approach is always going to be uniquely bad because our role playing as the state is not always possible for those individuals who can't actually see themselves as policymakers in the future, which means it's always going to decrease value of life.
Also, publicly accessible info is rooted in academic journals, which have never been accessible to those who...
Also, publicly accessible information is rooted in academic journals, which has never been accessible to indigenous folks that are structurally denied those things, which means their publicly accessible information is always going to be exclusionary to marginalized individuals. And the arguments about whether the state is inevitable, the state is not inevitable to the... this logic is literally what's used to deny indigenous folks other sovereignty by saying that the state is always going to be inevitable. There are literally indigenous groups that exist as sovereign nations within the United States, which means that the state is not inevitable. Don't let them win this claim. Yeah.
They say we see the political.
They say that we see the political.
But indigenous bodies have always been excluded from political calculuses to begin with.
But indigenous bodies have always been excluded from political calculuses to begin with, which means this argument is non-unique.
This form of erasure means that we are the only ones who have access to solvency.
This form of erasure means that we're the only ones who have access to solvency through our epistemological rupture. This is a sequencing claim to the affirmative, which means that if you want to learn how to act through public accessible information and the state, you necessarily have to do the negative first. Then, case done. First is that the NSG will never solve us. The point is that they still build nukes. Russia transferred nuclear fuel to India in January 2001, even though 32 of the 34 NSG reactors earlier, NSG what? Members earlier declared that the shipment would contradict Russia's NSG commitments. B is that internal conflict members can't agree on new criteria for transferring sensitive nuclear technology. They have also not reached an agreement on acquiring reciprocal safes to adhere to an additional protocol to their IAEA safeguard agreements. C is bureaucratic law. The NSG is facing internal problems, meaning it's also an inefficient actor. A more important and more pressing issue on the NSG agenda is reaching an agreement on a new guideline on making recipients adherence to an additional protocol, a condition of new nuclear supply, since there's no agreement that can be made on regulation issues such as this. Member states have been breaching NSG protocol routinely.
China's also bound to continue relations with Pakistan.
Third is that China's also bound to continue relations with Pakistan.
They're going to continue nuclear relations.
Which means they're going to continue nuclear relations.
3 reasons why war won't happen in the status quo.
3 reasons why war won't happen in the status quo.
First is that Pakistan already returned the pilot from India.
First is that Pakistan already returned the pilot from India.
There's no spark point.
Which means there's no spark point. 2,
That ships from India that went towards Pakistan have already returned around and returned
the
to
ships
India.
that went from Pakistan have already been returned and went back to India.
And third of all is that Pakistan recently launched an effort to go ahead and capture militants in the area of Kashmir.
And third is that Pakistan already launched an effort to go and capture militants in the
capture terrorist
groups in Kashmir.
There's no spark point from
Which
war.
means that there's no spark point for war. On the second advantage, they say that the first argument is that India was joining the NSG as a non-nuclear state. Literally, China and Pakistan have said this is going to be a condition, which means that they're not going to be able to access the nuclear technology or nuclear energy, which totally kills this. Also, they don't have access to Gen 4 reactors, which are the more important ones as far as new technology, which means that they're never going to be able to solve.
Not the text, please.
Yeah.
bad paper stuff? What? What is this bad paper stuff at the bottom of the framing? Yeah, so basically we don't need an alt to disprove the affirmative because of the fact that the affirmative is a bad paper.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
That seems settler colonialist in that you are rejecting a particular ideology but not prescribing a particular college. Why is this not settler colonialist logic?
It's not a form of settler colonial logic, firstly, because we should be able to test the truth claims of the PMC in order to understand them. But second of all, because we should be able to reject the premise of an affirmative without prescribing an alternative. It's not that we are claiming that we are the premise of the alternative. That would be settler colonialism. We're saying that the premise of the alternative is flawed or should be rejected because it's otherwise a bad form of logic.
Can you explain the sequencing claim at the bottom of the framework?
At the bottom of the app framework?
Yep, you make a sequencing claim about how indigenous people are excluded and there's some sort of sequencing that comes after that. I don't really get a warrant. So what is it?
Yeah.
The end of the framework is yeah, so I'm wondering what
You make a
the other
sequencing
responses we
claim.
make on there.
okay.
Sorry, give me 1 second to find that sheet. So essentially the sequencing claim is that we are a question, I believe, of accessibility. Oh, here it is. Okay, so we're always going to be like an internal link to actually accessing the idea of political calculations to begin with, right? Indigenous bodies have always been excluded from political calculations, firstly because their narratives have always been erased for cultural erasure.
Yes, so my question is, how do they get access if both policymaking and also like critical language in academia is inaccessible to them? Like, how do you change the sequencing question of access? How are you more accessible?
Firstly, we articulate that critical education and a discussion of things like settler colonialism isn't inaccessible, but secondarily, when the discussions of things like policy are rooted in academic journals, right? The way that we understand statistics from like Stanford is because we know.
Is SecCol literature outside of an academic journal?
Discussions of settler colonialism, firstly, aren't exclusively rooted in academia, because we have the ability to discuss these concepts through, firstly, like lived experience and listening to narrativity, but also the fact that like we see settler colonialism around us. It doesn't take Stanford telling me that SecCol exists for me to like know that it exists.
All right, over the app, in order of framework, and the rest of the app case, background, management, manage to. I put all their case stuff on the background, so that's why I'm going back up first. And then it'll be the K. There's a dump on the K. So I'm not sure where you want to flow that. But there'll be a dump there, and then I'll go framework, all links, impacts. For sure, yeah, I'll definitely do that.
Give me half a second to. Okay, framework, all links, impacts.
Yeah.
And what's the order for the app?
Framework, and then the rest of it in order, so background and management. All right, everyone good?
Yep.
You can see that the other policy action is a question of epistemological generation. This means you're a question of increasing education, knowledge about policy action, not a question of access. You have to see this argument from the get-go. That means you're accessible, critical. The argument doesn't make any sense in the context of us increasing education about policy action. That's why it's internal link to state action. State states composed of ideological repressive state apparatus. That's how it functions. We have to track that kind of understanding in order to understand how to use it there, or see across the world about what's the best policy action. We have the most standards under our advocacy, so we're gonna you're gonna want the other policy action. Your argument is critical literature is successful. We say no, it's not successful because of the high density literature and the terminology that are used. Rather, we say ours is more accessible. For example, the fact that you can go on Wikipedia or government websites that are publicly available for individuals to understand how the government functions. The next argument is you say those who are oppressed cannot access it. We say extend across the Black Panther argument that more example revolutionary actors work best within the state. This results in better solvency revolution movements. You drop Black Panther ends up to support argument. That's original reputation to me. Good idea. You say that you're rooted in academic journals. No, you are. You're some of the epistemology, which is inherently rooted in academic journals that are exclusionary and have paywalls. You say Sun Level, you're back to the warrants for argument states level because of the empirical instances of how Catalonia and Palestine want to come into statehood because that's the way that nationally organized. You say indigeneity, you say indigenous groups exist. They still have hierarchies and social formations. We understand how those groups are formed. We say indigenous bodies are always excluded. We say we are a prior question saying what exclusion actually happens because we create knowledge for the state. We say that in order to exclude, you concede particularism is good means we are not the rest of the state. So that means our action can be good. You say sequencing claim for the affirmative. No, you can see that we are a prior question saying knowledge production for the criticism.
Background?
You say NHG will not solve now. You concede to a solvent arguments by the NHG is a good actor and also liable to reduce the nuclear proliferation. It does not matter if they have tricky bureaucracy or internal conflict. The idea here is that if India joins that, it is not perceived as a bad actor from Pakistan's standpoint. You have missed the boat on your defensive arguments. You say, for example, Russia gave weapons to India. Guess what? That's solved by the affirmative because the world in which we have inspectors on the ground who actually look at the reactors. India will not have any nuclear fissile material that it cannot actually possess. The next argument, you say internal conflict. We say China probably wants to keep a close eye over India when it brings it in. This means that it reduces the likelihood of these scenarios guarding the offense. Also, there's no impact these defensive arguments. You're gonna be evaluating our solvency specifics better. You say China needs with Pakistan. No. Pakistan has been trying to stay the status quo right now. One is Pakistan to default instead to the IMF privatization results in no built around initiatives that China and Pakistan are no longer on good relations. Also, Pakistan is worried that China will call its debt. They're like into Sri Lanka, so Pakistan is moving to China right now. Except the rest of solvency, you can see that we solve for the entirety of affirmative, also nuclear proliferation and the environmental environmental degradation. Going to advantage one, you can see basically all the arguments that Pakistan and India are on the brink now. You have given a few arguments why they released the pilot line, they have reversed the ships, and also why they have kept militants in Kashmir. We say this does not get to the root cause of the idea that Pakistan is worried about Indian proliferation in general. It's not a question of the military perception right now, but instead about the equipment that India will have and is producing in the status quo. We say the only check back this affirmative solvency decay can not resolve. It's also a time frame question because because it's on the brink right now, this conflict will happen immediately, and the decay cannot resolve for any of these time frame questions.
Except the fact that there's like a historical reason why we are likely to go to war.
Except the historical reason, there's no reason why Europe particularly is even combat the historical reason. Then go on to link arguments, sit across the resolve all these issues. For example, through soft power and Chinese and other kinds of relationships. Go on to advantage two. We say we resolve all advantage 2, you have no arguments here, you just say that there's some new reactor or some G4 that's not reacted. It's a response to thorium reactors. Thorium reactors are a good source of energy because they reduce the need to produce waste. That means no violence against marginalized groups. Also, no reason why. Also, you can see that we reduce coal products, means you reduce structural violence against marginalized groups who are on that land. The same link turns to your entire person because you reduce the impact of settlement colonialism on marginalized populations by the use of industrialization and capitalism. Extend the impact of the first advantage. Extinction is likely in a world in which extinction is inevitable right now. The status quo because Pakistan and India will go to war. You do not grapple with this. We say that nuclear war results extinction. That's the biggest impact around. This is irreversible and always on magnitude. So this we're going to outweigh the criticism. Going to advantage 2 again. You can interested link turn to the entirety of the criticism because we're resolving back to structural violence occurring right now against marginalized groups. Tom? First is debating on a paper review process that probably justifies the permutation. Whenever you submit a bad paper, the professor still says that you need to submit a better paper. Also, the professor responds says you need to actually do something better. This results in resubmissions. That means it justifies permutation. The second is set call possesses a rationality of logical violence. Excludes anti-black violence, which are gratuitous, being excludes unforced violence that you cannot account for. This is definitely root cause claim. But also reason why you're also solve next time is land. You tie land subjectivity, which is essentialism. That means you're double line. You resolve for land. Them your essentials, or you don't resolve for land. You don't get the root cause of settler colonialism. The fourth argument is you disingenuous. You should not mention the Washington language and the industry that existed on this land right here because you're running your argument, but actually talking about settler colonialism that happened in this space. You were probably didn't issue this. This means that you would replicate the impacts of your Christian next with tokenization mistaken. You jump to the history of this land, how it's been colonized. You're probably looking back to your Christian next argument is a couple of disads. One, this orientation is still orientation and rooted in a logic of the master signifier, i.e. that Occupy Wall Street had no overarching strategy to actually organize the movement. Thus, the affirmative is needed as a strategy to actually organize movements in the first place and getting some solvency. The next argument is that making something alien or unfamiliar means you don't resolve for the complicity that we all have in this violence. I.e. you making it alien means that you don't recognize the personal responsibility that we all have to take in a world in which we have to recognize some of the colonialism and how it operates means replicate the impacts of the criticism.
Sorry, I have another impact to that. No complicity means there's always like white supremacists that are allowed.
No complicity means that white supremacists are always allowed to get in your room. That leads to co-option. It means that you always have to get the impacts of settler colonialism. Go to the framework proper crossed by our framework. We say Fiat's a prior question. You not good reasons why it's not. You say Fiat's agency in that it's illusory. We say the impacts are defense mechanism of Fiat. So if our impacts we are not illusory. Also a reason why also we not see agency because we are against our knowledge production that we produce knowledge in the state that can use that knowledge to deconstruct it. Alt. First, the permutation, do the affirmative and all non-competitive parts of the alternative. Again, do the permutation, all the non-competitive parts of the alternative, non-competitive parts. The only competitive parts of the vote neg aspect. The first method is the affirmative. You cannot resolve the affirmative on time frame or magnitude sale. You do not produce the neighborhood equations. You do not resolve the affirmative. Next argument is the macro micro sequence. Means that the only way to resolve for any kind of evolutionary reaction is through some overwhelming strategy. We say cross with the octave Wall Street. The next argument, go to your solve particular. Another disadvantage here is if you focus on epistemology, you don't understand how the state actually constructs knowledge because you don't engage with beyond. This is disadvantage language. Memory functions. The state can always remobilize itself from the alternative. It can use violence against individuals. Also, the permutation is not recreate violence. The permutation is a test of competition. Also, reason why we can resolve entirely criticism of the link turns. Links. The overview is advantage to us as a link turn to all the criticism. The idea that we can reduce environmental degradation probably resolves all these arguments. Also, these are mostly linked to omission because they don't look at the actual affirmative action. You say the first China Uyghur population and punishment. We say this is not like the affirmative. Do not portray China as a good actor. And so we probably discursively open opportunities to understand how China's a bad actor by identifying environmental degradation that happens right now in India that can also happen in other places. I mean, environmental degradation is interrogated by PMC. This link turns to your argument. Going to rational countries do not bring them as irrational. So we say rational. We say realism and controls how international actors conduct themselves. It's based on securitization laws. You can see this means your links are inevitable because if actors will always construct others as threats because of realism. You have no link arguments because your links are all non-unique. Also, we also say terminally being analyzed from the standpoint of other international frameworks who are not bring them as irrational. You say securitization laws. We say this is inevitable because you can see the realism working bottom of the currency that said that all international actors will act the same way. You say colonialism. We say you link them as hard because you don't have the groups that are colonized to this land. Also, we say MH2 links back turns because we can actually interrogate environmental degradation. Going to the impacts. We say extinction of prior question for a couple of reasons. One, time frame. Two is irreversibility. And three is magnitude. We say a prior question understanding any of the criticisms.
Okay, 1 minute, yeah. Okay, starting now.
You said that India and Pakistan have a historical reason why they want to go to war. Why hasn't war happened?
Right, so you conceded way too much solvency analysis about how they model each other. So we say that there's always tensions, but that those tensions flare up whenever one of the actors decides to nuclearize. So you conceded all the analysis about like the 1998 standoff where they were about to go to war. The only reason why they came off was because one of them decided to remove the troops, or one of them decided to stop
excluding
pulling
anti-black violence?
What?
Why do we exclude anti-black violence?
We see that you posit a logic or rationality in how violence functions. That excludes gratuitous forms of violence like anti-blackness that can't be pared down to some logical framework or ontological sization.
Order is going to be, there, okay. Order is going to be the dump on the top of the criticism, then the criticism in order, then it's going to be, okay, then it is going to be the roll the ballot debate, and then underneath that, it will be the rest of the affirmative in order. What's the K order? The K order is the new jump on top. Then it's going to be the rest of the criticism.
Like LC order?
Yeah. Yes, sorry, I forgot what the scale listing was. Wow, okay. Then it's going to be affirmative roll the ballot. Then it will be the case dump, and then the rest of the affirmative proper.
You okay?
Doing good.
Okay.
Okay. Everyone ready? Cool. Starting time now. Really quick, we're going to go ahead and respond to this dump. First of all, you're going to accept the fact that bad paper should already be voted down. They say that essentially basically we have to submit another paper or allow for resubmissions. A couple reasons why that's not true. First of all, this is always going to be the fact that we should allow for categorical rejection of the affirmative. The first place of the affirmative isn't necessarily bad idea or bad policy, or it doesn't solve. We should always reject it on face because the status quo will always be preferable to that. Secondarily, it always means that if they are always going to lose any of the link, if it's always going to really get settled colonialism, which means that even if you don't advocate for the all, they are necessarily replicating this cultural genocide like Chris and status quo, which means you should vote there. But we're probably going to not going to go for that. But anyways, on the excluding anti-black violence, first of all, is that we are always supposed to solve the root cause because of the fact that the indigenous folks are always constituted as the 0 point of modernity, which all their violence is constructed off that, which means we solve the necessary 0 point of modernity, may be able to accommodate structural violence in the future, but secondarily control the root cause of these cultural violence claims, because we have the ability to result for cultural violence writ large, as well as the root cause of all these solved, which is the ability to solve it initially, always articulate that the epistemology of settler colonialism is always framed anti-black as a way that, for example, black body for trans do that. We articulate that settler colonialism is focused on culture rather than specific land folks, which is why we don't talk about the cultural language or arts like specific groups because it's focused on specific material balance is never able to solve the cycle of society writ large, but instead creates a timeline that first of all is the truth for all indigenous populations, but secondarily means we never have the ability to discuss the settler colonial society writ large, but only focus on one material instance to just say we solved that good for us, which means we never did the internal society knows replicate the effects of cultural balance because we have the ability to hand wash which means we solve the form tokenization because we don't talk about the history of this land, but articulation is that by deconstructing settler colonial society writ large, we have the ability to resolve these forms of violence and deconstruct the source of non-production in the first lecture, which is we initially they don't mention it either, which means probably equal really good best, which means that we don't think about it either way on the framework. As for the fact that violence is not structural, it's not merely material, but it's in fact structural, which means it brings up the entirety of their essays. You can see the standing rock importation, which is fact we can't focus on material instances of violence, but should instead focus on the structure that creates. Initially, they see that policy is not driven by usual calculations, but instead by the logic of responsibility, which means that they never have the ability to first resolve their own impacts, but initially can't access the purification world, which they always use these usual calculations in order to make logic things never explain the violence of settler colonialism. Third of all, the fact that violence is always going to be freedom and structural, not merely based on quality of life, which is first of all, their advantage to never solve and proportionally improve the quality of life of black bodies that are already being damaged, but secondarily means we don't have the ability to solve this structural root cause argument. It's in the settler colonial epistemology constructs everything. The first one means we can never verify the truth case of the affirmative in a world which they are always going to be constituted by the logic of settler colonialism, but also means that we instead of truth claims we can't see initially the securitization warrant says that we always require the resources, which means that we always believe that conflict is inevitable. Takes out the first advantages are always just using the securitization rather to get us to do something and focus on something else. It's also settler colonialism. Flow to the fact that fields illustrate kills I love to say that this is a defense mechanism. They prove their impacts. This field is not illustrated. That's not responsive to the fact that their impacts are constructed through their psychological colonialism. Truth, you can't actually their impacts, which means the field is also going to be illustrated. But initially, field also individually kills by light, which means it trickles into their impact, which means that the bit stuff they say that non-production is key to deconstruct. But firstly, they don't deconstruct because they always write kind of logic of settler colonialism, but also means that they don't solve their affirmative. On the links. They can be the fact that they're always using China as a mediator in order to create land treaties or to allow this sort of mediation against two enemies and believe that they believe to be irrational. This isn't evidence by their case hands with the same fact that China or that Pakistan needs to be securitized against or they need to be securitized against, which means we need to solve. They say that rationalism is the one's going to control or realism controls rationalism. We are taking this idea of what realism is or what rationalism is means that we're always going to do this through logic of settler colonial epistemology, which means we need to solve. They can see the fourth, which is green colonialism. They say that every issue is green colonialism, but the focus on China is uniquely active green colonialism because it's the same logic that allowed, for example, the ability to push the cut off peoples off of their land, which means that they are always going to raise these impacts in their attempt to solve for the climate change. The interest that we solve for climate change and extinction writ large, which justifies violence against indigenous bodies, which means they never solve initially. They see the fact that they are always the logic of securitization because they're up against this cultural genocide. They say that all international actors act the same way, but firstly, it's just the justification that we use for securitization, but it means that they always create infinite amounts of conflicts in the order of the affirmative. It means they don't get access to their impacts on the affirmative, because even if they solve for this war, they're always going to fictionally create another one to be solved. On the impacts, they can see the cultural balance was going to be assimilationalist, the cultural genocide outcomes, which we saw. Initially, they see the way the root cause balance, which they saw. Say they firstly, the ability to solve on time for irreversibility, action, but these are all constituted first through the epistemic to settler colonialism, but also through their construction. Initially, felt their infinite balance is the biggest impact in their because the frontier is always unsustainable, will turn it on itself. Okay, on the perm. They don't get access to permutation. They say that they outweigh upon time for maximum. We've already said these conceptions are made, but secondarily, the macro distinction is always going to be particularly bad in one which they only focus on the ability for policy action to resolve these distinctions. They never actually solve for the subjectivity of individuals who themselves. They say the permanent test competition, which means it's shield link, but no, they still ratify the logic of politics of the state. They should be that each of these links should act as a sense of permutation. They say that the master signifier acts as an example. We articulate that we uniquely solve for the master signifier. First of all, we reject the master signifier because we have the ability to deconstruct forms of violence. Viewing violence as inevitable allows white folks to say that they want to just commit cultural violence because it's inevitable. But secondarily, even in a world which the master signifier is inevitable, this type of violence is inevitable. You uniquely solve this to the fact that we give some people access to violence, and the truth we uniquely solve this. On alien art feeling. We're not identifying alienities as necessarily being bad. We're requiring people to firstly confront their complicity to the
recognizing
academic
your
rupture.
own alienity.
Okay, it's recognizing settler colonialism's own alienity, which forces a knowledge of complicity in this. This is just antithetical to decay, and it's kind of just a statement that they say. Weigh this against very warranted claims of the alternative. They say the white supremacists are going to co-op, but first always to be solved because the epistemic rupture means the white supremacists won't enact violence anymore, but initially recognize that the violence that exists means we have the structural capabilities to check back against settler colonialist violence in the future. They essentially say we should focus on epistemology but no state field, which means we can't remobilize. We're controlling the internal link claim to mobilizing in the first place, which means we were always a proud question, not the rule ballot. They can see that critical education is always going to be more accessible. They just say that there's a high density of literature within technical literature. We articulate that we move outside of that technical literature to offer engagement with narrativity as well as articulations of how we can actually talk about the structures that exist around us. I don't ask Stanford for predictions for example, that settler colonialism exists, but they do ask that when they make predictions on the affirmative truth that we can never actually access it. But initially, they can see the fact respond to that? At worst, it's a wash, in which case you should weigh the criticism against the affirmative on its merit regarding the rest of their truth claims. They can see that they always force us to role play, which means that they can never actually engage in education policy, whether it's killing or not, like so it's going to outweigh a role which say that we can never actually get access to things like education and policy in the first place, which means that when they say policy is the eternal like state action, first they never access policy because we're already ontologically dead, but second of all, we never have the ability to access any of the claims of perfect state action because even if state action happens, never enough to uniquely solving subjectivity settler colonialism. On the scene of the political. Firstly, there's one that indigeneity is never considered in state capitalism in the first place, and we need to create knowledge about the state or generate knowledge about the state, because the state has literally just structurally excluded indigeneity in two ways, in which indigenous nations are always viewed as the other and not allowed to participate in politics in the first place, which means that it's never actually responsible. Second, means that it's a sequencing play. You have to open the alternative, and then the affirmative, which means that the permutation never solves when you do both at the same time, because then we never get access to political in the first place. If they don't make a sequencing room, don't give them access to this. They see the state's not inevitable because it's literally the claim they use to justify sovereignty articulation as to how indigenous minds should never access sovereignty because of the fact that these states inevitable, which is not actually true. Additionally, they say you should flow through Black Panthers more as meaningfully aligned with the articulate that it's just not responsive to the fact that we have the ability to respond to the state. On the case answers, extend the internal conflict of the bureaucratic log with a massive double bind on the affirmative. Either the status quo solves because there will be no more in the status quo, or there's the solvency deficits of the affirmative are takeout. They say that India, Pakistan have this long word, there's a spark point at any moment. If there's a spark point at any moment, then the solvency deficit of NSG means that they never have the ability to solve for this. Or they are not at the spark point yet, in which case the status quo solves because we've already denuclearized the conflict. Additionally, impact truth as well as dinosaur truth claims of the PDB means you're never actually able to look actually about any of their impacts, even if they get access to the links you get whether impacts first because they're always constructed through settlement colonialism, second of all, because they're always constructed through settlement colonialism, all you're going to white cultural difference at the hardest, they can see that the root cause claims, they can see that the zero point of modernity, you vote there.
The LOR is on an NPTE. Where's my water? Let me know if anyone's not ready. Are you good?
Sure, whoever was.
Yeah, whoever was on.
Oh, we didn't finish.
Yeah, I didn't know who it was. Okay, cool. This speech has two parts, layers and PMC. First part is layers on which you're going to be voting first. The first layer is going to be the epistemological skew that is always going to frame out their arguments. Society has necessarily, psychological society necessarily constructs knowledge production, which means that their arguments about global war being around the corner are literally the product of a collection of psychological states. This is the orientation that we read you out of the LOC about how we constructed Iraq as having weapons of mass destruction because we were a psychological society and necessarily wanted to be imperialist, which means that you, first of all, are necessarily going to indict all of the claims that they try to make. It means that you can't buy any of their truth claims about coming out of the affirmative impacts. But second of all, it means that they're always going to necessarily recreate the impacts because they further this rhetoric, which means they're necessarily worse than the status quo, which means that even if you are buying the alternative as a way of solvency, there's necessarily a worse reason why the affirmative is worse than the status quo because they propagate this rhetoric that is necessarily skewed by psychological society. The second place you're going to be voting for us on the fiat debate, we articulate why for being forced to role play as the state is uniquely bad. They try to articulate that role playing as the state is good because it forces us to because it allows us to engage with the state from within. But insofar as we articulate, first of all, that the state is not inevitable, which means that we necessarily do not have to learn how to engage with it, and that necessarily, and second of all, they can see here that this is always going to be uniquely violent. They never actually make any contestations as to why that role playing itself is not an act of inbound violence, which means that you're voting them down on fiat, and also it means that you necessarily are always going to be evaluating their fiat claims at a level below ours, necessarily because they can see that fiat is the next place you're going to go to. The third layer of the debate is going to be that the alternative solves the act. First of all, we're winning claims that we are necessarily the root cause of wars and imperialist violence, as well as the root cause of violence writ large, which means that doing the alternatives necessarily always going to solve for the root causes of those wars that happened in the first place, as well as the root cause of that environmental degradation. Then the last layer is going to be that the perm or the advocacy, the plan is always going to trigger the links. The first argument is going to be green colonialism. The only response they make here is that this is necessarily inevitable insofar as the uniquely are winning and often endorses disorientation. This is not a unique argument insofar as they literally endorse the People's Republic of China doing an action to safeguard against environmental harms. And we know that the People's Republic of China is necessarily going to enact this in this settler colonialist fashion. This is always going to be linked. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Go to the impacts. You're always going to weigh our root cause points against theirs because, first of all, they're isolating one instance of a spark point for work that we saw for the root cause of solve. They might try to go for arguments coming out of the affirmative, but we tell you that SG is always going to be bogged down by bureaucracy, which means you're weighing a low chance of solving one instance of war on the affirmative. But they literally make the argumentation for us that this war is always going to be inevitable because they tell you that they have historical tensions between these two countries, which means if they solve for this instance of spark point, there's probably gonna be another one in 5 years or 10 years or 50 years, which means they're never going to be able to solve long term, which means the alternative is always going to be a prerequisite. On the perm, they might try to go for the perm. A couple dissets here you're going to be extending. First one is going to be footnoting because they're always never going to acknowledge the violence of the cycle structure. Second is going to be frontierism, so they're always going to replicate infinite violence. The third is going to be that they're always going to be using utilitarian calculus, which means that they're never going to be able to solve. What was the other one, Shmid?
What?
Other dissets on the perm that you read?
They don't know. The inclusion of the affirmative policy means that they always replicate the set call.
The inclusion of the affirmative policy means that they're always going to necessarily replicate the set call state. Also,
they never solve for cultural violence because they never account for assimilation.
and they never solve for cultural violence because they never account for assimilationist violence. They also might try to go for the K-dump, but we put a lot of work here. And so far as we tell you, insofar as we tell you that they might try to go for this argument that necessarily, like, we're going to include white supremacists because recognizing something is alien, but literally the text of the alt is that we recognize our own alienity, which necessarily forces white supremacists and other set-called forces to recognize that they are in the wrong, which is necessarily the only mechanism that actually solves for set-called violence. You have to vote there.
Great. The order is the app framework, the rest of the app, the K stuff on the K, and then the K and the other stuff.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, one second. The app framework, the rest of the app order. Okay. Then the K down, then the K and the other stuff.
Sorry.
I'm so sorry. You're good. My time was 2 minutes short.
3 reasons why we're voting for rest TV, and this to be the first one is going to be that you are out frame for believe that the other is going to be a better way to understand structural analysis. It's going to be our reason as to why one we get our essential impact, which is going to be outweighing the time frame against the criticism. The second reason is going to be a better way to evaluate the publication, which is going to be leading to a better structural analysis about the way the set of colonialism. The second way that you can vote for the affirmative is going to believe that you relink it to a set of colonialist logic, which is the reason that's why you defer to the affirmative, because the affirmative always believe you're relinking your race recreating your criticism, which means that you vote on the permutation on the